मारुति मार्केट लीडर ऑप्टिक्स में यार, बाकी आ गए, ये तो लाई नहीं अभी तक गाड़ी.
What is Maruti Suzuki doing about it when it comes to especially safety?
People said ये क्या ला रहे हो छोटी सी सेडान, ये नहीं चलती. Yes, yes.
तो प्यार में ही दर्द होता है.
Exactly.
It's like that.
मोहब्बतों में ही लड़ाइयाँ हैं.
Exactly.
जी जी.
Shashank-san, if I may say that, and start with this. Maruti has had a runaway success with the launch of its multiple SUV models. There was a time when the consumer in India was upgrading from regular sedans and hatchbacks to SUV.
Yeah.
And Maruti had the fortune and the fortitude to understand and also plan for it well in advance and capture the trend with multiple models. Can you give us a sense, when did you plan for it, and how did you go about capturing the SUV market that you have done today?
One of the big strengths, I believe, which Maruti Suzuki has, which has resulted in our continued dominance in the passenger vehicle space in India, has been this deep understanding of consumer requirements, the consumer trends. So if you take our history, how we started with the Maruti 800, the Omni, the Maruti 1000, the Esteem, Swift, Ertiga, Desire, they were all like category creating models. So in many sense, we created the category, and that means you have to have an anticipation of what the consumer really wants. This is done with a lot of research. And for the SUV space, we saw the trend early, by the way, because we brought in the prototype, the show model of the Brezza, which was in 2012 Auto Expo. But the actual launch happened in 2016. In 2016 onwards, you saw the entry SUV space climbing up hugely. It was about 4% of the market. Today, it is obviously 25% plus of the market. But really, it started off that it zoomed up from 2016, thanks to the Brezza. So we anticipated that trend. So did also, in many respects, the mid SUV space, which is now the second largest segment in the passenger vehicle industry after the entry SUV segment. It is now about 23-24% of the total passenger vehicle. We introduced the S-Cross in 2015-16 financial year. That did not do so well, but we did anticipate that this segment will also grow. This segment was at that time around 11% or so, but today it is about 23-24%, and second largest. Anticipation was there, but I think the rapid pace at which SUVs expanded, especially in the last 3 years, just around the COVID and after, has, I would admit, taken us by a little bit of surprise. And with the result that we had just one SUV, which was the Brezza, in a space where there are 47 other brands, the competing brands. Our market share last year, Q1 in SUV space was 8.5%. If you take the whole year, the financial year 22-23, our market share in SUV was just 10.5%. Now, in the non-SUV space, Maruti Suzuki has always been like really great in terms of market share. Even today, in fact, our market share has been increasing last 5 years. It's now about 65% in the non-SUV. But when you combine it with that 10.5% of SUV, then it falls below 45%. So obviously, in our target, which is to achieve 50% share in the medium term, we need to increase our market share in SUV space from 10.5. And therefore, we had planned, and it was in the drawing board anyway. Remember, a new model in the industry comes with a 4-year planning approximately, about 40 to 44 months of planning. So we had in a very short time introduced the Grand Vitara, which was in September of last year, France and Jimny this year. As a result, now we have 4 SUVs. And with that, we could become the #1 SUV manufacturer. If you look at the H1 of this year, we are the #1 manufacturer of SUVs in a very quick time. Our market share is now more than doubled of last year to almost 22% now. And hopefully, as we go along, we will try to continue this pace and try to increase our market share further.
So what was the one big reason of this consumer shift from a sedan or a hatchback to SUV? Is it the economic growth of the country and people having now enough budgets or money, or was there some other reason that people wanted to move on from hatchbacks and sedans to SUV?
First of all, the buying thought, the criteria of purchase today is a little bit more aspirational compared with what it was earlier. Earlier, it was largely functional. So functionality, price, value, cheaper spares, maintenance costs, running costs lower. Those were the real
Parameters for buying.
the criteria for buying. But they shifted as economy grew. As you rightly just said, that economy grew and volumes increased. So you saw sub-segments emerging. And then you saw the emergence of a new category of consumer. We call it India, compared with the Bharat, which is like the more functionality-oriented consumers. It's not about geography, it is about the mindset. So the new India, which was like more urban, tech savvy, more aspirational, that customer has emerged. And with that emergence came the choice of new body type, which is signified some sort of extra status, the presence on the road, the fact that you have reached somewhere, and that therefore the market started shifting towards slightly higher price, and at that time SUVs were slightly higher price, of course. So SUVs, but it's not just about economy or economic growth. It's also about the fact that people realize that they are really good cars for Indian condition. The road clearance for the ground clearance for SUVs is higher, especially suited for Indian roads, because Indian roads can be not so good. Then the flexibility of utilization of interior space in SUVs is really good. Unlike a 3-box car, which is a sedan, where if you don't use the
latter part or the front
part, then nothing can be done of it. I mean, the interior space remains the same. But in this case, it is quite the interior flexibility, the driving position, and the feeling of dominating the road. You feel a little bit more safer. I think that's the concept in Indian conditions. If you have a higher driving position, you feel more in control.
From an earlier parameter set of functionality or necessity of having a car or a 4-wheeler to drive, we've gravitated and moved upwards to saying that I need, as they say in Delhi, feel ke liye gaadi le rahe hain. Right? So you move towards the reason of driving for pleasure and not necessity.
Plus the road conditions need not be good across the city. You know, there will be some parts of the city we will have a not so good road clearance. But I'm glad you mentioned about the other aspect of SUVs, which is, you know, it is also been sort of encouraged by the type of buying that we see now. So initially, the first-time buyers were huge. Even now, they have been quite good, around 45-47% is first-time buyer. But you know, the upgraders, the replacement buying has increased. And therefore, it's a natural sort of progression for smaller car buyers, the hatch buyers, to come up to something like a hatch or a sedan. And of course, apart from that, the price points, especially in the entry SUV now, are overlapping with premium hatches and entry sedans. And that means there is a cross consideration for the SUVs, which was earlier not there among the premium hatch and the entry sedan.
So, which is what I want to understand more. How do you manage these entry price points? For, I mean, Maruti is known to give value for money cars, but it's not easy to bring that price point to a point where, you know, consumers who are just about at a hatchback spend $1 lakh or 2 more and get into the SUV mode. How do you go about driving efficiencies and bringing those price points to that level?
So it's that typical Japanese Kaizen method. You keep on improving your productivity little by little by little by little, absorbing new technologies, try to build efficiencies, both of economies of scale with our suppliers, as also with our production processes. So those things help, obviously. But one of the important things is this class of SUVs which emerged was the 4-meter SUVs with the Brezza, which qualify for a smaller GST, which is a 20,
True. Okay.
the thing. Although Brezza is in a higher category because of the engine size is more. But if you look at other vehicles like Fronx or a Baleno or a Punch, for example, or a Exter or a Venue.
Right.
And
So
they
in
are all
terms of their
qualifying
size
to
as well as in terms of their CC, the throughput engine, they qualify, for a lower GST.
thing, and that explains the overlap in prices, and that explains the large cross consideration that I just spoke about from the premium hatch buyers and the entry sedan buyers for the SUV category.
Right. Last question on SUV. Is there a difference in terms of consumer preferences and buyer behavior between a tier 2 town or a tier 3 town compared to a tier 1 town?
I think if you look at pure SUV factor, then the preference in the smaller towns is and earlier also it used to be for diesel vehicles. But if you look at in other ways, the larger SUVs, the percentage of sale in urban areas is much more compared with and I'm not talking of the Bolero, Scorpio type of vehicles, but the mid SUV range of vehicles like the Seltos or the Grand Vitara.
That's more in metros.
The Creta, and that has got a larger tilt towards tier 1 rather than a tier 3 or tier 4 cities.
Okay.